It was a cold, foggy night in California when I was driving alone across Stern Bridge. I was about halfway across when I noticed a figure standing by the side of the road. The area was isolated, and there were no other vehicles in sight. The person appeared to be badly injured, leaning against a pole, as if waiting for help. I stopped my car and rolled down the window to ask if they needed assistance. To my surprise, the figure slowly turned to face me and, with an unsettling calmness, said, "Go, get away from this place." Before I could ask anything else, the person vanished before my eyes. There was no sound, no movement, just an eerie silence. I immediately sped away, feeling a deep sense of unease. When I crossed the bridge again, just a few minutes later, there was no sign of anyone. The oddest part, when I did some research, I found that this bridge had a history of strange occurrences. Many locals claimed that the place was haunted by the spirit of a man who had died there years earlier in a car crash, and that he often appeared to warn people at night. I couldn't shake the feeling that I had encountered that very spirit. It was around 2 a.m. on a foggy night in 2008 when I was driving through a lonely stretch of highway in rural Canada. The fog was so thick that I could barely see more than a few feet in front of me. As I drove, I noticed a figure standing on the side of the road, waving their arms. I couldn't ignore it. I felt an overwhelming sense of concern, thinking they were in trouble. I pulled over to offer help, and a man, looking worn out and disheveled, approached my car. He said he was heading to a house down the road and needed a ride. He got in without a word, and I started driving again. Oddly, he didn't say anything during the ride, just sat there staring straight ahead. I kept glancing at him, but he was motionless, his eyes hollow and distant. As we continued, I felt a rising sense of dread. Everything about him felt wrong. About 10 minutes into the drive, I couldn't take it anymore. I decided to pull over and asked him to get out. When I looked over, he was gone. There was no trace of him, and the door had never opened. I sat there, bewildered, and then started to drive again. I later found out that this stretch of highway was known for mysterious disappearances and strange happenings. It was dubbed the Road of Spirits, with many drivers reporting encounters with figures that disappeared into thin air. In the 1970s, I was traveling through a remote, rural road in England on a late night. It was one of those places where no other cars passed for hours. The trees loomed on both sides of the road, their branches almost blocking the sky. As I was driving, I began to notice something unsettling. A car had appeared behind me out of nowhere. It was an old-fashioned vehicle, and despite me speeding up, it stayed close behind, matching my speed perfectly. At first, I thought it was just a coincidence, but the more I tried to lose the car, the more persistent it became. The eerie thing was that I couldn't hear its engine, even though it was right behind me. At one point, I noticed the road ahead clearing up, but when I looked in my rearview mirror, the car was gone. There was no trace of it. I continued on, shaken, and later learned that this stretch of road was notorious for similar stories. The vehicle was described as a ghost car, often appearing behind drivers at night and disappearing when the road cleared. It is said that this road was once the site of a tragic accident, and the spirit of the driver is still roaming the area, haunting anyone who dares to drive through after dark.